फ्रीडम एक ऐसी फीलिंग जो हर इंसान के दिल के सबसे करीब होती है। जब एक परिंदा पिंजरे से निकलता है, जब एक बच्चा अपने मन की बात कह सकता है, जब एक समाज बिना डरे अपनी सोच व्यक्त कर सकता है, तभी असली आज़ादी महसूस होती है। और इसी आज़ादी की तलाश हर समय, हर देश और हर समाज ने की। Freedom is not just a word, it is an experience, an emotion, something that defines the very essence of life. Without freedom, a person is like a bird in a cage, wings intact but unable to fly. जब एक इंसान आज़ाद होता है, तभी वह अपनी पूरी शक्ति और सोच का उपयोग कर सकता है। Imagine a world where you cannot express your thoughts, cannot travel where you want, cannot choose your profession, or cannot even assemble peacefully with people who share your ideas. Freedom is not just about convenience, it is about identity. It is what makes life worth living. From the earliest civilizations to the present day, the fight for freedom has shaped history. Whether it was the Greek philosophers who championed free thought, the American Revolution that fought for independence, or India's long struggle against colonial rule, the demand for freedom has always been the heartbeat of every progressive society. Among all freedoms, the right to freedom of speech and expression is perhaps the most precious one, because it is through speech that people raise questions, voice dissent, and drive change. After independence, India recognized the importance of securing and protecting the freedoms of its citizens. The constitution makers ensured that every Indian would have certain fundamental freedoms under Article 19, which guarantees 6 essential rights. The first is the freedom of speech and expression, which allows every individual to voice their opinions freely. The second is freedom to assemble peacefully, enabling people to come together and express collective concerns. The third is the freedom to form associations or unions, which let people create organizations, whether political, professional, or social organizations. The fourth is the freedom of movement, allowing individuals to travel anywhere within the country. The fifth is the freedom to reside and settle anywhere in India, ensuring that a person is not restricted to a particular region. The sixth is the freedom to practice any profession or engage in any trade, giving people the right to choose their means of livelihood. These freedoms forms the backbone of a democratic society, where every person has the right to live with dignity, autonomy, self-respect. Over time, Article 19 has evolved through constitutional amendments to address new challenges and realities. The First Amendment Act of 1951 introduced crucial changes by imposing reasonable restriction on freedom of speech and expression. Initially, the Constitution did not specify detailed restrictions, but after certain court rulings were struck down, government imposed bans. The amendment was made to clarify that free speech could be limited in the interests of public order, security of the state, and friendly relations with foreign states. The 16th Amendment Act of 1963 further strengthened these restrictions by adding the sovereignty and integrity of India as a ground for limiting freedom of speech. This was done in response to rising internal threats and successionist movements, ensuring that speech or action that could harm the national unity were kept in check. Freedom cannot be absolute. जब आज़ादी का दुरुपयोग होने लगे, जब किसी की स्पीच से वायलेंस फैलने लगे, या किसी के वर्ड से किसी दूसरे के सम्मान को हर्ट पहुंचे, तब उस फ्रीडम को कंट्रोल करना जरूरी हो जाता है. That is why Article 19 also imposes reasonable restrictions, as we have discussed. A speech that threatens national security, spreads hatred, disrupts public order, or defames someone is not protected. Similarly, a person or a person's right to assemble or form an association cannot be used to incite violence or harm national security. These restrictions ensure that freedom does not turn into chaos and that personal liberty does not come at the cost of harming society. A major expansion of Article 19 came through a 97th Constitutional Amendment Act in 2011, which added cooperative societies as a fundamental right. This amendment recognized the right of citizens to form cooperative societies, acknowledging their role in economic development and social progress. Cooperative societies are an essential part of rural India, allowing farmers, workers, and small businesses to pool their resources, work collectively, and strengthen their financial security. By including in Article 19(1)(c), the Constitution ensured that the government could not impose unnecessary restriction on forming and managing cooperatives. This change emphasized self-reliance, community-driven economic growth, and democratic participation in economic affairs. In recent years, freedom of speech has been repeatedly tested in India. The Asim Trivedi case of 2012 became a symbol of how laws can be misused to silence dissent. Asim Trivedi, a political cartoonist, was arrested on charges of sedition for his satirical cartoons criticizing corruption in the government. While his arrest sparked outrage, it also highlighted the increasing use of vague laws to suppress free expression. The assassination of Gauri Lankesh, a journalist known for her fearless reporting and criticism of majoritarian politics, was another dark moment for press freedom in India. Journalists, artists, and filmmakers regularly face restrictions, bans, and threats. Films, books, and art exhibitions are censored or banned for being politically sensitive or offensive to certain groups. Governments across different political parties have often used laws like sedition, criminal defamation, and hate speech regulations to suppress voices that criticize the system. The debate over what constitutes free speech and what counts as hate speech continues to be a major issue in India's democratic space. The freedom of speech and expression has been at the center of many landmark legal battles. One of the earliest cases, Ramesh Thapar versus State of Madras, this is the case of 1950. It established that free speech is the foundation of democracy and cannot be curtailed without a strong reason. Another critical case, Bennett Coleman and Company versus Union of India, this is the case of 1973, emphasized that press freedom is essential for an informed society and no government can impose restrictions that control the flow of information. In the digital era, the Shreya Singhal versus Union of India case, this is a case which happened in 2015. It became a turning point when the Supreme Court struck down Section 66A of the IT Act, which allowed arbitrary arrests for online posts. ये डिसीजन मॉडर्न इंडिया में फ्रीडम ऑफ एक्सप्रेशन का एक सबसे बड़ा विक्ट्री था, क्योंकि इंटरनेट के ज़माने में फ्री स्पीच सिर्फ न्यूज़पेपर्स और टेलीविजन्स तक सीमित नहीं है, बल्कि सोशल मीडिया और डिजिटल प्लेटफॉर्म पर भी उतनी ही ज़रूरी है. बट फ्रीडम इज नॉट जस्ट अबाउट स्पीच. Other freedoms under Article 19 have also evolved through significant court rulings. In the Maneka Gandhi versus Union of India case, this is the case of 1978, the Supreme Court expanded the interpretation of the right to movement, ruling that no government can arbitrarily restrict a citizen's right to travel, even outside India. In the Indira Gandhi versus Raj Narayan case, that was the case of 1975, the court upheld the principle of free and fair elections, ensuring that democratic expression is protected even in political spaces. Similarly, in the Navtej Singh Johar versus Union of India case, this is the case of 2018, the Supreme Court decriminalized homosexuality, upholding the right of individuals to express their identity freely and live without fear. These cases show that freedom is not a static concept. It evolves with time and social realities. A society that values freedom grows intellectually, economically and culturally. जब एक व्यक्ति बिना किसी डर के जीता है, तभी वह अपने विचार प्रकट कर सकता है, नए आइडियाज़ ला सकता है और अपनी पूरी शक्ति से समाज का विकास कर सकता है. Nations that suppresses freedom eventually stagnate and fall behind. Whether it was Nazi Germany, the Soviet Union, or modern authoritarian regimes, history has shown that when people's voices are silenced, progress comes to a halt. India, however, has always upheld democratic values even in challenging times. हाँ, कई बार ऐसे मामले आए हैं जब फ्री स्पीच को चैलेंज किया गया है, पर जुडिशरी और सिविल सोसाइटी ने हमेशा इन राइट्स की रक्षा की है. Freedom is not just a constitutional right, it is the very soul of humanity. Without it, society loses its ability to think, to question, and to innovate. But with it comes great responsibility. जब हम किसी इशू पर अपनी राय देते हैं, जब हम किसी मुद्दे पर डिबेट करते हैं, तब यह समझना ज़रूरी है कि फ्रीडम का सही उपयोग हो रहा है या नहीं. Liberty does not mean recklessness, and rights must always be exercised with care. Article 19 is a living example of how a nation can balance individual freedom with collective responsibility. Every time you speak, write, travel, or choose your profession, remember that this freedom was earned through struggle, protected through law, and must be cherished by every citizen. It is not just a legal profession. It is the very essence of human existence. Let's use it wisely, protect it fiercely, and never take it for granted. Thank you and Jai Hind.